Welcome to Winning the War with Worry, Part 16. Today we are going to talk about the practice of thinking. When our minds are overtaken with worry, distress, or discouragement, there's only one thing to do. We have to remember. We have to call to mind the truths we need. We have to take control of our thoughts and stop listening to ourselves and start talking to ourselves instead. We have to preach to ourselves, lecture ourselves, exhort ourselves. In short, we must go on to the next verse in Paul's prescription for a better life, the practice of thinking. Philippians 4:8 says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things." Out of the 32 words in that sentence, only one is an action verb, and it's the key word of the verse and the sole imperative. It's the word think. If we have anxious thoughts, we'll be anxious people, because what we think is the most important thing about us. We are what we think, and our lives, attitudes, feelings, reactions, results, failures, successes, and personalities are formed by the strands of thought that tie our brain cells together like baling wire. To have less anxiety, we must think, and we must think rightly, on the right things, at the right time, on the right wavelengths, with our antenna tuned to the frequency of God's truth. We cannot overcome worry or anxiety unless we learn to replace worried thoughts with worthy thoughts, thoughts that come directly from the mind of the God of peace. That requires thinking on things that are true and noble, lovely, praiseworthy. And when we learn to take time for thinking, and when we learn to think in the right way, the benefits come over us like a metamorphosis. This once happened to E. Stanley Jones. Though he had gone to India as a missionary with visionary passion, his energy had evaporated amid unbearable heat, hostility, and anxiety. He collapsed, and even prolonged rest failed to restore him. His nerves were shot. He resembled the Apostle Paul at Troas. One night in the city of Lucknow, while praying, Stanley Jones suddenly felt the Lord speaking to him. Though not audible, the Lord's voice almost seemed so. Jones sensed these words, "Are you yourself ready for this work to which I have called you?" "No, Lord, I'm done for," Jones replied. "I have reached the end of my resources." The Lord seemed to reply, "If you will turn that over to me and not worry about it, I will take care of it." Jones said, "I close the bargain right here." At that moment, a great peace settled into his heart and pervaded his whole being. I knew it was done. Life, abundant life, had taken possession of me. I was so lifted up that I scarcely touched the road as I quietly walked home that night. Every inch was holy ground. For days after that, I hardly knew I had a body. I went through the days, working far into the night, and came down to bedtime wondering why in the world I should ever go to bed at all. For there was not the slightest trace of tiredness of any kind. I seemed possessed by life and peace and rest, by Christ himself. Jones labored on for decades, serving more than 40 years in India, preaching around the world, sometimes 3 times a day, writing a dozen books, and becoming one of the most famous missionaries of his generation. From his evening encounter with the Lord at Lucknow until his death in January 1973, E. Stanley Jones lived in the glow of the sufficiency of Christ himself, never forgetting the Lord's promise, "If you turn that over to me and not worry about it, I will take care of it." If you'll listen quietly and in the stillness of his presence, the Lord is whispering those very same words to you, and he tells you to think about such things. God bless you. Have a great day.